الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله أما بعد. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone. Welcome to the very first episode of The Muslim Engineer. I hope everyone got their coffee, got their tea, whatever, and I'm going to get started on the very first episode. Alhamdulillah. This is going to be a long-running series where I'm going to probably record more and more videos concerning engineering topics, trying to dive into any major engineering principles and stuff. But the very first episode that I'm going to be talking about is what is actually engineering and why should you as a Muslim care? You see, every person, especially in the Muslim manosphere, have been pushing the idea of business, right? You gotta do business, you gotta make money, you gotta make bank, you gotta sell something, right? But what's funny is that I personally feel aren't pushing the right thing. You see, it's easy to push business to someone and use these buzz fluff words to tell people that they should just sell stuff with all money. But what's actually important is actually inventing and making something to help better humanity and the ummah in general. And that's why I believe that there should be more people out there talking more about Muslims in engineering and in the science fields discussing specific developments and future things that could possibly impact Ummah. But specifically, what is engineering? There's a funny meme going around where people have been talking about, what is engineering, right? It's like, it doesn't make sense. Everyone is sort of confused about the idea. And very simply put it, engineering is the idea of applying science to reality. That's all it is. It doesn't necessarily make sense because think of it in comparison to a doctor. Doctors are considered a part of the health field. That's what engineering is. Engineering is a field. And then there are engineering specifications in that field that then determine what type of engineer you are, right? For example, if someone goes up to you and says, oh yeah, I work in the health industry. Well, what in the health industry are you? Are you someone who's researching and developing? Are you someone who's a doctor, a pharmacist, a nurse, a neurologist, all these different things, right? That's in the health industry, but it's not necessarily something that's reflected on the other jobs that there are. It's the same thing with engineering. Engineering is the idea of applying known sciences to creating or building or implementing things. That's what engineering is simply applying science. But what specific fields could we say are in these engineering fields? Most people know about software engineering because of OpenAI and what they've been doing with artificial intelligence. But there are also a lot of other things that are not really commonly known. For example, mechanical engineering, which is the idea of applying mechanisms and applying forces in physics or Newtonian physics to specific mechanisms to help make them work in a specific way. A lot of these imply and work with thermodynamics. They work with Newtonian physics, like I mentioned, hydraulics. A lot of the stuff that's used today for modern movement technologies is done and organized by mechanical engineers. There are also electrical engineers. Electrical engineers is this sort of big umbrella term that is working with anything with electricity, right? As you know, everything around us today uses some form of electricity, right? Your computers, whatever you're watching this on, your lights in your house, even now some ovens who use electricity to heat up coils. That's all part of electrical engineering. Not to mention also stuff like telecommunications, power storing, and all that. This is a general umbrella term. This was what was commonly done previously, which was just a general electrical. However, in modern times, more engineering principles have come up. Generally, we have these main few words, which is also, chemical engineering as well, which is just a general application of chemicals into things. It's pretty bland. But generally, we had these four major ones previously, which was just chemical engineering, mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, and also civil engineering. Now, civil engineering is the very last one, which is simply just how would you organize a civilization, right? How would you build stuff? Like physical, like resident places and objects such as bridges and stuff. Of these four main ones, this was what engineering was for the most part. In recent history, however, there have been more and more different engineering principles, such as computer engineering being one of them, electronic engineering, which is another one of them, software engineering is actually the latest known and considered engineering principle in North America, I believe. It's the very last developed engineering up to date. What specifically is software engineering is, I think computer engineering is pretty straightforward. It's the engineering and design of computers, and same with electronics, is that instead of computers, you work more with microcontrollers and small other objects. But software engineering is a very interesting case study that we might look at in a different podcast. I might have a professor of mine who knows and would want to dive more into it, where software engineering was initially not considered an engineering principle. However, over time and over a period of time, after a lot of discussion in the engineering field, it was eventually considered an engineering principle because of specific uses. Because of them eventually having to develop frameworks and actually having to build something, but in a virtual way, therefore causing them to be considered engineering. But that's a whole different topic for a different time. Right now, we're just trying to get over the very, very basics. What's actually interesting about the engineering field, unlike a lot of different things, is that there is a lot of overlap between engineering principles, right? It's not like how you might have specific things blocked up, right? So where you have one block of, okay, I'm a mechanical engineer, I'm just going to work on mechanics. I'm an electrical engineer, I'm just going to work with electricity. In engineering, this is actually something that's rarely ever done. You see, when people have a project, a lot of the time it's interdisciplinary and actually requires interdisciplinary collaboration in these things. Every single project always has at least somewhat around a minimum of 2 engineering principles combined, right? You might want an electrical engineer and a computer engineer. You might want a computer engineer and an electronic engineer. You might want sometimes even a chemical and a mechanical, right? For example, in what's known as hydraulics or hydraulic systems, which are pretty much air or liquid controlled pneumatic systems, you might actually want a chemical engineer to create a solvent for you that might actually help you with your piston movement, right? These interdisciplinary collaborations are actually a very big and integral part. That's why a lot of the time when you're meeting with engineers and they might not be in your specific field, it's still good to communicate what you do, right? Because you never know when you might be needed for something. And that's what's really interesting about engineering, is that we as engineers, what we do is we actually try to build these projects and interdisciplinary projects to help improve society. And it's sort of the duty as someone of knowledge, especially as a Muslim, to use the knowledge that we have been given and learned, because engineering knowledge isn't something easily understood or easily overcome, right? There's a reason why, especially in the university I go to, there's a 70% on-time graduation rate with a 15% drop rate, right? There's a reason why a lot of the people in the world aren't able to become engineers, not because it's a matter of, pushing hard and doing it. It's a matter of is that not every single mindset is geared towards being an engineer, right? And as a Muslim, it's our duty to share and implement knowledge that we've gained, whether it's secular or Islamic knowledge. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, during the day of resurrection, what he will do is, one of the questions he's going to ask is, what did you do with the knowledge and how did you implement it, right? The last thing we all want to answer that question was, oh, well, I knew a lot, but like I didn't do anything. I sat all day playing League of Legends, or I sat all day playing video games, right? Or even worse, the knowledge I was given with, I used that knowledge in a worse way. And that's like even worse than just sitting on your butt, right? Like implementing the knowledge in a bad way. And that's why it's so important as Muslims, we're able to not only implement the ethics we might learn in university, but also take from our scholars and ulama about specific, specific rulings and ethics that we as Muslims should know anyways, but we as engineers specifically need to take, because us and the things we build will have a direct impact on society and the ummah and what might actually happen in the future. It's a very, very important thing. For example, imagine you're considering yourself as a mechanical engineer who builds a bus model, right? And this bus model has a fatal flaw. The last thing you want is that bus model to roll out, you sell that bus to people, and then people are trying to do their Hajj, or they're trying to get from from their house to their school or to get from their location to a mosque, and that bus either exploding or causing significant damage to the drivers, right? We, normally, as someone who isn't ethical or someone who isn't a practicing Muslim, is worried about just selling the damn things and getting them out the door. And hey, I make my millions. I put my patent down. I make another million, and I leave. I leave to go piss off to Mexico somewhere. But that's not what we Muslims do. And there is this big understanding, not in the North American industry, but a lot of the China and Russian engineering places where innovation is actually halted, and cheap, easy products that don't work are much more important for money making than actually making something that's worth and good. So a lot of the consequences as Muslim engineers will actually cause a lot of problems going forward. Also, about another thing with engineers is that we have the ability to make people's lives significantly easier. Engineering is like a double-edged sword, like everything in life. Same with business or whatever you want to go into. Everything is a double-edged sword, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you the opportunity to do good or to do bad, to do haram and to do halal, to choose what is right and to choose what is wrong. And the problem is that as engineers, we, over the past, now let's say like 20 years, have made a much bigger dent and impact on the world than over a longer period of time that changed people's lives completely. I remember back in elementary school where my teachers were telling me we had to memorize the multiplication table, and they were telling us that, yo, you don't need to memorize it. Why do you need to memorize the multiplication table? You will never have you will never have a calculator in your pocket, or you will never have a grammar correcting thing in your pocket, or there will not be someone who's a typewriter right next to you, so learn how to write cursive. And guess what? Today's day and age, we went above and beyond that, right? Previously, we were able to have a really strong calculator in our pocket, and that then developed into now robots writing for us, which is crazy to think about. And not only in a technological and knowledge sense, but also in a medical sense. And in the coming weeks, I'm going to get a current medical student to talk about Islamic medicine compared to the normal medicine today, which you all should watch out for in the next coming episode. But we have this huge train of innovation. But on top of that, like I was previously saying, even though we help people not only with medically, where we had people able to overcome much more serious diseases than previously before. Previously, your leg being amputated could be the death of you. Your, heart stopped working. Well, you're done then, fam, right? You're done. All this stuff would have been immediate death, but with the engineers and people working in the medical field, we were actually able to develop these stronger technologies and these new medical practices through engineering to help figure out a way to prevent them. And finally, I think the major one that I would want to talk about is renewable energy. Progressively, I think the government has tried to lay off this idea of, carbon is bad, methane is bad, we're going to try our best to stop burning these fuels and stuff. But progressively, more and more people have been switching to renewable energy, especially farmhouses, where farmhouses have seen a significant growth in renewable energy like solar panels are actually used. So it is actually very, very interesting to see this die. And finally, on top of this really, really awesome good stuff, there's also a lot of bad stuff that's linked into it. I think one of the major ones that are currently, I think, a big plague is privacy concerns, hacking and having deficiencies in software, right? If you guys have heard of Edwin Snowden leaks, a lot of the stuff was saying that people were being spied on, private conversations were being listened to, and even cameras were being photographed. And I think that if you're a Muslim and you don't have a camera cover on your computer, or you don't have you personally go around with your phone everywhere and have it out, I think you should really, really reconsider because, the last thing I think anyone wants is to have a private conversation between a husband and a wife or a sister and a brother, leaked or exposed to the world or put in some database for a government to use, right? Islam is very important with their privacy, especially how it's haram. It's haram to fully spy on a neighbor, right? Or to spy on someone, or even overhear major conversations that you shouldn't, or even leaking conversations you had between people that are private. And I think that people who don't learn about the religion, who don't read the Quran, they want to continue and try to, overcome and not really pay attention to these things and implement these haram backdoors that might be in specific applications that people don't really consider. Especially as someone who's in the software industry, I think many people should be really concerned about having your applications be not broken or cracked, because this could cause people to use your application in a haram, malicious manner, which is the last thing any Muslim engineer wants. Not to mention, in Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the people who Allah does not love is the people who spreads corruption on the earth, right? And this, based off what some tafsirs have said, also concerns the corruption of the land, like destroying the land for unnecessary reasons, right? So it's important that as an engineer, whatever field you're in, you have to make sure that whatever you're doing or whatever you're building in construction, A, is useful and it's not just necessarily there to take up nature space, but also B, doesn't actually damage the environment, right? It's really easy for someone to make a lithium battery product, but what happens after that lithium battery gets used, or that one-time object that you're doing with a lithium battery in it, is then thrown into the ocean or the river and causing many pollutants and destruction in the world. So I believe that in turn, we as Muslims, I'm going to pretty much sum it up and say that we as Muslims, we definitely need to learn our religion more so than someone who is in business. It's really easy for someone in business to learn the fiqh of riba, to learn the fiqh of business, to learn what is halal and what is haram, and then just leave it at that. We as Muslims, as Muslim engineers specifically, need to be spearheading Islamic knowledge. We need to, because there's so many unethical things that an engineer has their doors open to that most other industries do not, right? If you're in the medical field, you have to know about what is halal or haram medically. We, as engineers, we need to know about the fiqh of keeping the environment safe, specific fiqh of whatever project we're working on, right? If I'm an engineer working in the medical field, I have to know the fiqh of medical projects, of medicine, and what I have to worry about when developing an application. But then after I've done that software project or hardware project or whatever project, I might then have to jump to a different project in a different sector, where I'm now developing a finance application, and I jump from that project to a different application. So you as a Muslim engineer need to be on your toes, need to be on the Islamic hustle, learning as much as you can so you can apply these Islamic ethics into what you're doing. Because without it, it's done. It's done. It's so easy for you to have a haram product that you might accidentally put out, and then boom, what happens then? Haram product, haram money. Then what? Right? You want to give away the millions of dollars you could possibly make with engineering? No, you don't. Obviously not. So it's really important that Muslim engineers, especially young Muslim engineers who are on their deen, who are on upon the haqq and want to do what's halal and help the ummah, need to learn. Like I said, a part of the major things I said is not only having a responsibility to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but more importantly also having the rights of people, the rights of nature, the rights of the body, all of these rights that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed, which is part of the things you as a Muslim should already know, is even more destructive when it comes to being an engineer. These rights sometimes could be broken without you realizing it. For example, for all my software engineers out there, imagine developing an application which has some sort of backdoor developed. This means that people are able to view conversations that are between two separate people. This is actually a right you're breaking, because there is in Islam a right to confidentiality between two people, right? If a Muslim brother comes to you and he tells you about a sin for help or for whatever reason, right? That's a confidential, that's a trust, that's an amana that brother has given to you to keep. Now imagine you as an engineer just being there like, oh yeah, by the way, I recorded that conversation and I'm like giving it to everyone, right? That would be crazy, right? That would be crazy to do. That would be a very shameful thing to do. A lot of people will be really mad at that. But the thing is that we have this, that we don't really think about this when developing these major products. That's why it's so important that also as Muslims, we concentrate not only on these sorts of projects, but actual important projects that embody Islamic values, specifically stuff that's humanitarian and stuff that helps boost the ummah in a specific way, right? I would personally say, being someone who works in the infrastructure field or someone who works in developing halal applications for Muslims to use, especially, for example, Sunnah Match, I think is a big thing in the UK where Muslims who are trying to get married, who there are actual scholars who verify that application to be halal, and there are people who use that application properly. It's applications like that that have an Islamic value to them and that actually help boost the ummah with their healthful way in some way. Furthermore, if you are someone who works in a field which develops some sort of movement technology, it can also be very useful that you as a Muslim take this knowledge you gained from building and working on secular transportation things, which is again another big rising tech field, and apply that for humanitarian aid. Right? There are lots of brothers and sisters in Africa who are struggling to get food, right? Who are struggling to get water. Or right now with the earthquakes in Turkey and Syria, what happens is there's a lot of struggle with transportation, right? That's why, and it's important that you're able to take the knowledge and be able to spin it and make something that's helpful to the ummah, right? It's really good to be able to give, oh, I'm giving my $200 on sadaqah and I'm doing the, inshallah, it will be helpful. You know what's actually helpful? Developing something and actually out developing something and actually applying it to help the people there. Because $200, yes, is awesome. You're helping them. They might get a meal, or they might get meals, or they might get clothing. Lovely. But you know what's actually important? Getting them out that damn rubble. Right? That's why it's so important as engineers, we're able to band together with the knowledge we have and push this forward. That's why it's always something very, very important to keep on this humanitarian. I personally believe that also as a Muslim, you need to know how to incorporate your Islamic morals and Islamic ethics into specific things you're building. I think that every Muslim should have, and I have a personal philosophy that every Muslim should have some sort of higher scholar or some person of knowledge they can seek in a quick phone dial. It's not always easy, and not everyone has, so that's perfectly fine. But as a Muslim engineer whose work actually affects the thing, I think that scholars should be able to take time out of their day and to actually discuss this in full length and detail, right? Because what happens with a lot of scholars is that they keep their heads in their books, but they don't get the full picture of the technological involvement in it. So it's important that as a Muslim engineer, and as someone who has this secular knowledge, we bring this knowledge to the ulama in a way that's digestible to them so that we can get Islamic confirmation on what we should do, right? Just so what we're doing is A, helpful, B, pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and C, something that's able to help us gain success in this dunya and the akhirah. It's also important that as a Muslim engineer, once you get that consultation from the scholars, you have to push this on to the people you're working on the project with, or making sure that they know your ethical boundaries. It's very easy for someone to, oh, I talked with a scholar and they said this application or this building is halal, but then this building is not used for the proper things. Then what? Is that you as a Muslim engineer, you have a lot of power. You have more power than you think. Right? Especially if you're a North American and specifically in Canada. If you're an engineer in Canada, you have power. You have power. Especially if you get a professional engineering license, you have a lot of power. You are in very, very high demand, right? You're not as easily replaceable as people make you think you are. So if you know that your application, what you're working against is haram, or you consult with a scholar and they say, listen, bro, this is a very dangerous thing. This could cause a lot of harm. I think you should back off. You're more important than you think. So I think a lot of Muslim engineers should take a step back and consult with these scholars, seek some halal options and opportunities, and communicate this with specific stakeholders. But more importantly, try to keep projects in the ummah. It's a really difficult thing because there's no investors here. I say this respectfully. A lot of the Muslims in Canada are brokies. All the rich Muslims are in Saudi. So it's really rare to find good stakeholders. But if you are an engineer and you have really strong ideas, you should try to keep a Muslim circle because they're first who are going to be more open to what the scholars say and the guidance say. But if not, like I said, you have the opportunity to leave and you have the opportunity to take the right steps. But all with, due diligence. I'm not, people who are listening to this, you're not children. Don't take my word for everything. Do your own due diligence. Do your own research. Learn more about Islam. Don't be coming here trying to take some fatwa about what I'm saying. I'm trying to spit some general knowledge on what Muslim engineers should do. And I think that's a very important thing that we need to keep in mind generally with things. Going off of that, Muslim entrepreneurship is also another big thing. I know I said in the beginning, oh yeah, Muslim engineers are probably better than normal Muslim businessmen. People constantly push the normal businessmen, and that's very much so. If you guys don't know Brothers Club is something run by Imran ibn Mansour, which was a club for Muslim brothers and Muslim people trying to start up new businesses, learn more about Islam, learn how to be a good man, etc., all that junk. But what they were pushing is entrepreneurship. Is that, bro, you got to be able to leave. You got to be able to seek knowledge on your own time. You got to be able to go pray salah and pray your sunnahs and seek knowledge and, be able to pray tarawih and be able to sleep in a good amount of time in the morning, all that jazz. But what I want to personally come from the general roundabout and coming from a different angle is that I think if you're an engineer, you got to be an entrepreneur, bro. If you have the opportunity as an engineer, go work underneath someone, get your professional engineering license, go do what you got to do, go get that bread, start up a family and all that. But in your own time, develop your own product. That's what it is to be an engineer. If you're not ready for that, you should probably consider your choices. Because if you're not an engineer who's going to be constantly prepared to build something, do something new, be prepared to jump from project to project and have your own things in the background that you can also sell, and try to get into this entrepreneurship mindset, you're not in the right field. Engineering is not about building down one big thing and moving on. Engineering is about building as many things as you can with the limited time you've got on this planet. Building good, strong, and foundational things. Innovating, making new things. And more importantly, learning also about business and how to set up your own companies so that you're able to push this knowledge and push this information of business into the products you make, right? In fact, I would consider that you'll be saving money, not only through patents, which in Canada, what you can do is you can design something new, put it through a patent firm, and then proceed to get a lot of money for people who use that thing that you built. Just because you designed it, you get money, constant money off that. Or on top of that, you can build your own products. For example, let's say there's some people I know who built a small plane drone and they sell that, right? Ooh, what's the best part about that is that you actually save money by having someone build that specifically for you instead of having to pay royalties for someone to use their product. It's funny to see people, for example, setting up, phone brands or makeup brands or whatever brands, and they're just ripping off another website's or another company's stove, and then they're putting that, they're pretty much taking someone else's stoves or their other ideas, and then copy pasting that into a Shopify account, and then saying, oh yeah, buy our stove, and they use a little bit of networking and marketing, and then boom, bada bing, bada boom, they have a product and a business that they had set up. But what's going to happen is if that back end of yours or if that Philips seller of yours gives up on you or they shut down, you don't have a market now. You don't have a business anymore. Your legs have been pretty much cut off if you do a sort of business plan. And I'm going to probably talk more about this in an episode between engineering and entrepreneurship. But this general idea is what's really, it's sort of a big thing that you and a lot of people should consider in entrepreneurship. But not on top of that, another reason why you as a Muslim engineer should care is that it's in our history. Islamic engineering has been a very, very big thing. Ever since between the 18th century and the 13th century, a lot of Muslim engineers, who are also scholars, mind you, built the knowledge and techniques and built on top of previous civilizations like the Greeks, the Romans, and the Persians, right? Some major ones are Al-Jazari, Al-Birni, Al-Hasin, even I'm trying to read that, Batuta, even Batuta, right? These were the main people that actually changed a lot of the major things we know today. Everyone talks about, oh yeah, Muslims invented coffee, which I should actually take a sip off real quick. But they were talking about, oh yeah, we made coffee, we made universities, but you know what else we did? We made a lot more important stuff than just some coffee, right? The water wheel for milling was not a thing until oops, I should probably cut that out. It wasn't a thing until like I was saying previously, there were many different things that were built other than coffee and, university. The water wheel for milling wheat, which actually implemented and made making food so much easier than previously before. Some other things were the astro, the elephant clock, and other irrigation systems that actually made food and harvesting much more efficient than it previously was. On top of that, architecture was a big thing that we couldn't have done with a lot of these different Muslim engineers. Some of them being the Great Mosque of Quba, the city of Baghdad, and also a lot of the current things that were done also by the Ottomans. Finally, I would also say that these major systems were then spread out throughout the world and was shared the knowledge that was done by the Muslims and converted and given to everyone so that people were able to use these technologies to learn and to actually help implement them into their societies, which is very, very important. That, I think, sums up the video for today. The first podcast. I really want to know how I can improve, so please like, comment, subscribe to the episode, subscribe to the Muslim Engineer. If you have any comments or concerns on how I can improve or any specific topics you want to cover, drop them in the comments below. I want to hear your say. And I'll catch you next time on the Muslim Engineer. I hope you enjoyed your coffee, because I sure did, and I hope you like the convo. Have a good one.